Welcome back to our continuing series on becoming an evidence-based analyst. In this installment, we will be practicing the second step in evidence-based analysis. Develop a model that can warrant a claim by predicting the root causes of a problem or opportunity. As with each tutorial, we will begin with a quick review of the steps of EBA. This review is provided to ensure that you are clear where this tutorial fits within the overall process of evidence-based analysis. Then we will select a specific claim to analyze using an answerable question. The remainder of the tutorial will be a step-by-step guide to the EBA warrant model development process. This process may be used by a team of evidence-based analysts or by an analyst working alone to assemble a warrant model. The warrant model guarantees a claim should be true by predicting the level of influence each substantive cause should have on an expected outcome. As we progress through each step, you are encouraged to frequently pause this tutorial to practice the step on your own. Repeated and frequent practice is necessary to transfer newly gained knowledge into skill. Also, while you are practicing, you should engage your curiosity and desire to learn by exploring deeper into the analysis. Scan a few pages of the search results produced by Google Scholar. Seek to discover articles with titles you find personally interesting and relevant, which we will not cover in the tutorial. Practice the techniques we review on these and other articles to hone your skills or to discover questions about applying the techniques that can be posted to the EBA discussion forum. You will find that the additional articles begin to establish your developing distinctive expertise. Armed with the knowledge of what factors have substantive impact, you can provide insightful commentary to others, whether for bonus points in a class or to impress your boss, colleagues, or friends with your depth of expertise. Please post any questions or comments on EBA concepts and techniques in the discussion forum. We have added a new discussion forum called Ask Charlie to give you direct feedback on any concerns or questions you may have. Over the next several weeks, you should implement the procedures covered by the Becoming an Evidence-Based Analyst tutorials. Begin by submitting to the discussion forum a draft EBA warrant model of factors that you find interesting or valuable. Keep in mind that the best presentations are developed iteratively through several drafts. Each draft incorporates revisions based on the feedback received on previous drafts. Share your drafts with loved ones and friends to practice explaining the model. Through this sharing, you will discover which insights are the most valuable because they elicit that, wow, or I wouldn't have known or thought that. Or better yet, they spark a debate for which you are now uniquely qualified to lead as the authority who possesses the evidence. As discussed in the previous tutorials, there are 4 steps required to perform EBA. These steps allow us to develop or evaluate a claim statement. We begin an evidence-based analysis by asking an answerable question. In the second step, we seek to find a model of the causal factors and their effects on outcomes the question seeks to understand or influence. If we fail to find a model, we will need to develop one from backing studies. Backing studies provide detailed examples of how and why the causal factors are associated with outcomes in organizational settings. The Step 2 tutorial consists of 2 parts. In the first part, the last presentation, we reviewed the elements of a warrant model. Part 1 discussed the differences between significant and substantive factors. We reviewed how to calculate total effects of a causal factor using Wright's path tracing rules. Finally, by eliminating all the insubstantial effects, we learned which factors should be given priority because they had the greatest effect on the desired outcomes. In Part 2, we will be extending our model by considering supporting, or otherwise called corroborating, models, and models that pose reservations because they find that some of the predicted effects are not substantive in certain settings or conditions. In future tutorials, we will be examining the remaining steps of EBA. In Step 3, we evaluate, compare, and systematically analyze the effects of the substantive factors across a variety of settings. The evaluation consists of weighing the quality of the evidence presented in favor of or opposing reservations for the model. Comparison is made on the definitive claims about each factor. A valid definitive claim applies highly reliable measures to assess the degree of the factor that is being present in the studied population. Systematic analysis requires that we determine how the effect size varies across studies. This analysis produces a range or interval of confidence in the estimated causal effect size. Finally, in step 4, we assess the risk of an evidence-based recommendation. Thus, the last step in EBA is to calculate prediction and measurement risk associated with the designative and definitive claims, respectively. For this tutorial, as with any EBA presentation, we will be seeking to answer a question that can determine the validity of a claim. The claim statement we will examine was made by Terry Scandura in her book, Essentials of Organizational Behavior. Terry claims an effective working relationship with your boss predicts all of the outcomes of organizational behavior. In other words, the exchange between a leader and a member of the organization is predicted to be a highly substantive influence on the primary outcomes of performance, work attitudes, motivation, and commitment, or its opposite, turnover, the intention to quit or withdraw from participating in an organization. As discussed in Part 1, the easiest models to begin with are those that literally draw the connections for us. Therefore, we should begin our evidence-based analysis of this claim by searching for path models that connect the proposed causes, in this case, leader-member exchange, with a desired outcome. We will focus on organizational commitment for our example. You will be asked to practice the techniques we will discuss throughout this tutorial. Throughout the tutorial, I will ask you to pause the playback to practice the steps in developing an EBA warrant model. The sequence of models is what should be produced by a group collaborating on an evidence-based presentation. How to enter searches in Google Scholar was discussed in Part 1 of this tutorial. Here, we will search for articles that are likely to include structural equation models that depict the effects of leader-member exchange, or LMX for short, on commitment. You should type the exact search phrase shown here into Google Scholar. This way you can follow along with the tutorial. If you do not currently have Google Scholar open in a browser window, you should pause this tutorial and open it. Then type the search phrase exactly as shown, paying careful attention to include the quotation marks where shown. I will pause for a few moments to allow time for you to pause the tutorial and retrieve the results of the Google Scholar search. You should have found that the search terms we chose produced 9,660 results, or thereabouts, as hits from Google Scholar. Many of these articles would provide valuable insights related to our question. Google defaults to sorting the results in order of relevance. You can see that here by the sort by relevance being highlighted in red on the left menu. Notice also that the words we included in our search are bolded in the titles and text that Google abstracted from the paper. If we had wanted to systematically restrict our results, we could elect to show only those articles published after a certain date. Default selections are this year, in the last year, and in the last 3 years. You can also select a custom range of dates. A systematic review might restrict the results to papers published in the past 10 years. Since we are seeking to develop an initial model rather than systematically analyzing all the evidence, we can click the links to the full text for the first few articles. I will pick the first 5 to provide an example of how 5 people could collaborate to produce an evidence-based warrant model. Each article should be scanned quickly to confirm that it contains the information we need. We only need to look for a diagram, a picture of a path model that includes correlation estimates of the effect sizes associated with each causal factor. If you have your copy of Google Scholar set correctly, you should show library links next to many of the results. A link to the full text of the article will show for any paper that is accessible through the library. Here we see the full text at IU South Bend for all the articles available through the IUSB library. Clicking the full text links will bring you to the page for that article. If doing so brings you to a paywall, one that asks you for payment, then try the next article link instead. If none of the article links provide you access to the full text, try the journal link and browse the journal page for the volume, issue, and page number shown. If none of these methods provide access to the full text, or the library link is not available, contact your librarian to request a copy via interlibrary loan. If you have selected the correct article link, you should be taken to a page that provides a link to the full text of the article in PDF or HTML format. Each search engine, such as EBSCO shown here, provides a different way to access the full text of the article. However, in most cases, the link to the PDF full text should be clearly displayed as shown here. If you are not certain how to access full text, you should contact a librarian who can walk you through how to search the results and lead you to the full text of the article. Assuming you select the PDF version of the file, it will likely open first in a browser window. You may be able to use the file directly here. However, often it is best to download the file to your computer before starting to analyze it. You can do that by clicking on the little drop-down arrow when the menu appears. Once you have opened the file in Adobe Acrobat, you will want to locate the population, interventions, comparisons, and outcomes that are included in the study. Most important, do not read the paper. Search it. Don't scan it. This is by far the fastest way of analyzing a file. Reading takes much too long. Scanning can cause you to miss important details. Instead, you should search the text by typing Control F in Windows or Command F on a Mac. Type the word method to find the section of the paper that describes the method used in the study. This is where you'll find the listing of the population, the people who participated in the study, the intervention, the independent or causal variables or mediating or moderating factors, the comparisons, which are the measures used to define those factors, and the outcomes, which are the dependent variables or factors in a study. Using your search, Adobe will take you immediately to the methods section. The population is the sample of participants included in the study. This information is typically found in the first paragraph under the methods section in a subsection titled, as we see here, sample. Sometimes it'll say participants. You should be noting the number of participants and what was the setting of the study. In this case, there were 254 non-supervisory employees from 28 work groups at a hospital. Locating the intervention and the comparison comes next. The method section includes a subsection entitled measurements, or measures, or instruments, or observations, or other forms of measurement. The measure for each factor is listed independently. This provides a definitive claim for that factor. A definitive claim includes a reliability estimate, otherwise called a Cronbach's alpha, in order to show the reliability of that measurement scale. It also includes a description that provides a number of items or the name of the scale, or it may include a reference to the paper in which the measurement scale was developed or initially validated. For the example here, perceived organizational support is defined using the short version of a named scale, the Survey of Perceived Organizational Support, that was developed by Eisenberger and colleagues in 1986. It is an 8-item scale with a reliability of 0.94, which is extremely good. Last and most important are the outcomes of the study. These are both the factors that are influenced and the effect size of each causal factor on each outcome. We locate the factors that are outcomes by finding the diagram in the paper that shows the factors and their effect sizes or correlations. The outcomes are the factors that have all the arrows pointing into them that come from other factors, which are the causes or mediating and moderating factors. We should ignore all other lines. For instance, this shows arrows coming into the outcomes with numbers off to the side. Those are error lines, and we can ignore those. We are only interested in the arrow lines that come from a causal factor into an outcome factor when analyzing a designative claim. The interventions are the causal factors. Those are the ones, again, with the arrow lines pointing away from them into the outcomes. Double-headed arrows indicate that the connected factors are really synonyms. We can choose to ignore by combining or include and distinguish these different factor effects as we wish in developing a final model. However, typically in a final EBA model, we only choose one of these two factors to represent in the final model and eliminate the double-headed arrows. We analyze the direct and indirect effects by applying Wright's path tracing rules. Again, please refer to part 1 of this tutorial for an explanation and example of how to calculate a Wright's path tracing rule. By putting this all together, you can produce a PICO summary of the article. Again, PICO stands for population, intervention, comparison, and outcomes. This is the analysis that would be conducted first by an evidence-based analyst, or perhaps the first member of a team. When the team of analysts is developing a model together, they each select a different article from the Google Scholar search results to analyze. Whoever finishes their analysis first produces Model 1, the initial warrant model. The PICO summary and the model diagram should be posted for the other team members to review and to compare with their model analyses. On the right side of the slide is Model 1. Model 1 was produced by eliminating all the insubstantial effects that were found in the paper's model, shown on the left. You can draw these models using a free online tool called Lucidchart. There is also an Enterprise edition that provides support for team collaboration in developing these models. In the Enterprise edition, you can share models with each other and you can draw them together. Students at IUSB can get the Enterprise version for free through IUWare. Let's look at how we transform the original model proposed by Satoun, Bennett, and Leiden in 1996 into the EBA model on the right. First, we eliminate the redundant factor of perceived organizational support, which is a synonym for LMX, as shown by the double-headed arrows. Next, we start with the one factor that has only a direct link that was substantive, the link between LMX and citizenship behavior, or OCB. Then we have to calculate the total effect of LMX on enroll behavior. To calculate the total effect, we must combine the direct effect of 0.39 with the indirect effect through perceived organizational support. Notice, in this case, that we are converting the double-headed arrow to a single direction arrow. To calculate the indirect effect, we multiply 0.68 times negative 0.07, which equals negative 0.0476. Because this is a negative path coefficient, we have to subtract the negative 0.0476 from the direct effect size of 0.39 in order to calculate the total effect of LMX on enroll performance. The result of 0.34 is shown on the line connecting LMX and enroll, or otherwise known as job, performance. Lastly, we must calculate the indirect effect of LMX on organizational commitment. You may want to pause the tutorial here to calculate this path yourself to verify that you understand how to calculate indirect paths. I will pause for a few moments to allow you time to either pause the tutorial while you perform these calculations, or simply to verify that you understand and have developed the correct answer. If you are unable to produce the calculations that result in a total effect of 0.47, you should stop this tutorial and watch part 1 again. The first model analysis can now be checked off, but since the search produced a number of results, the second member of the EBA team has many more papers to choose from, but of course the most likely candidate would be the second paper in the list. Alternatively, prior to beginning the EBA model development process, the team may assign specific articles to each team member. Before assigning an article, the team should confirm that the necessary model diagrams are available in each assigned article. Let's now examine the paper by Hui, Law, and Chen, published in 1999. However, before doing so, you may want to pause the tutorial shortly to review this paper yourself. You should practice the steps we have just covered in this tutorial to locate the population, interventions, comparisons, and outcomes analyzed in this study. Produce your own PICO analysis that you can compare with the one that will be shown on the next slide. Similarly, you should analyze the model effects found by this study. Compare these effects with those produced in Model 1 shown here. I will now provide you some time to pause this tutorial. Please resume the tutorial after you have read and reviewed the Wee, Law, and Chen paper and come to your own conclusions about its findings from Model 1 shown here. Remember, by read, I mean locate the correct information and make a notation of the information necessary to develop a PICO and to determine how you would revise the model diagram. Here is a summary of the PICO for Wee, Law, and Chen 1999. Does this match what you discovered in your analysis of the paper? If not, you may want to stop and replay the prior 4 slides of this tutorial to review how to develop a PICO summary. You might also consider posting a question in the discussion forum about any clarification you feel is needed in order to understand where to locate the necessary information. This slide shows a revised model that was enhanced with the findings of the Wee, Law, and Chen 1999 study. Does this match what you discovered in your analysis of the paper? Notice here that this paper created reservations for the prediction that LMX will improve job performance and organizational citizenship behavior. We learned from our PICO summary that this study was conducted in China. The authors also used a different definition of LMX based on the Scandura and Grain 1984 7-item scale. Similarly, different definitive claims were made about OCB and job performance. Therefore, several reservations need to be considered about this model. First, LMX may have different effects in other cultural settings. Second, the definitive claim and its associated measures may be critical to determine if substantive effects will be found in a study. Third, the reliability differences between these definitive claims will need to be examined in the final risk assessment phase of an EBA analysis. This final step considers the measurement risk of a model. The definitive claims of this reservation study appear to be much weaker than those of the original model. Therefore, we will want to look more closely at the PICOs of other studies of LMX and its effects to determine if these reservations represent considerable risk to using LMX as a leadership strategy. The first 2 papers are now combined in a revised model using the Lucidchart program. Team member number 1 produced the first model, which was then revised and augmented by the study results from model number 2. A third analyst on the team could now begin the next step, or if us being conducted by a single analyst, they would simply perform each of these steps on their own. Let's now examine the paper by Wayne, Shore, and Leiden that was published in 1997. However, before doing so, you may want to pause the tutorial shortly to review this paper yourself. Compare the effects found in this third paper with those produced in Model 2 shown here. Are any of these effects different in this third study? Are there any other substantive effects that we need to add to the model? Produce a PICO and a revised model that summarizes the results of the Wayne, Shore, and Leiden paper. I will pause the tutorial to allow you time to stop and restart the tutorial. Please resume the tutorial after you have reviewed the Wayne, Shore, and Leiden paper. Please remember that you will want to revisit the earlier slides in this tutorial if you don't recall how to access, search within, or abstract the necessary information from a scholarly paper. You should come to your own conclusions about the implications of this paper for Model 2 before you resume play of this tutorial. Here is the PICO summary of Wayne, Shore, and Leiden 1997 paper. Does this match what you discovered in your analysis of the paper? If not, you should stop and replay the earlier slides in this tutorial that review how to develop a PICO summary. Wayne, Shore, and Leiden add some very interesting information for us to consider. First, they used a random sample of employees. As discussed in the paper by Sue et al. On evidence quality ratings that I asked you to read in an earlier tutorial, a randomized study provides higher quality evidence than a structural equation model. Structural equation models are also referred to as quasi-experimental studies. Second, this study considered the effects of possible antecedents or causes of LMX. However, none of these antecedents had a substantive effect on LMX and therefore can be ignored in our EBA model. Third, this paper moved commitment from being an outcome to being a mediator factor, an intermediate cause of the outcome intention to quit. Similarly, organizational citizenship behavior, or OCB, was moved from being an outcome to becoming a mediating factor of enroll performance ratings. The same LMX scale used for the definitive claim in Model 2 was used here, but the reliability with the US sample was much higher. We will need to consider whether this scale may be better for use in Western countries because of its high reliability in the US, while an alternative scale might be more appropriate for Eastern nations. This paper used the same definitive claim for perceived organizational support as Model 1 and found almost identical reliability. A similar finding is called corroborating evidence. We should feel more confident about using the Survey of Perceived Organizational Support scale developed by Eisenberger and Associates because of the corroborating evidence that was found here in support of this definitive claim. All other definitive claims were different than those used in the other models. Let's now examine the implications of this paper for our revised Model 2 diagram. This slide shows the revised model that was enhanced with the findings of the Wayne, Shore, and Leiden 1997 study. Does this match what you discovered in your analysis of the paper? With the addition of this paper's model, we now have deeper insights into how LMX impacts important organizational outcomes. The effect of LMX on organizational commitment was corroborated by this new model. In fact, by reducing the effect of bias through the use of a random sample, this paper found the impact of LMX on commitment was increased from a small to a medium effect. Commitment was also found to have a small inverse effect on the desire to withdraw from or quit an organization. In other words, as commitment rises, the likelihood of turnover should decline somewhat. Additionally, the use of LMX as a leadership strategy can influence turnover intention directly as well as indirectly through improving commitment. Collectively, these effects indicate a moderate impact of LMX on turnover. You should apply Wright's path tracing rules to see why the collective effect is expected to be moderate. As for performance, this paper found the direct effect to corroborate Model 1's prediction, which weakens the reservation, at least as it pertains to U.S. organizations. However, the effect on citizenship behavior was found to be much smaller, which is important because OCB has a moderate influence on performance. The first three papers are now combined in a revised model using the Lucidchart program. This provides an example of how three people in a group may develop an EBA model presentation by working independently to analyze separate papers before the results are combined. There is some need for coordination. However, each person can develop their PICO slides on their own. Then, either as agreed between the team members, working together, or in a sequence of models that are posted to a discussion forum, each team member augments the model that is posted before theirs. The fourth and fifth analysts in the team would continue this sequence. They would examine the final two papers shown in our brief search results. These two papers provide a final set of practice exercises for you. You should separately analyze each of these final two papers to practice the steps we have covered in this tutorial. I will pause the tutorial to allow the time for you to analyze these papers and then restart the tutorial when you're ready to proceed. Please resume the tutorial after you have completed your analysis of papers 4 and 5. You do not need to create PICOs for these papers, but consider what are the implications for Model 3 before you resume play of this tutorial. This slide shows the final model produced by examining 5 warrant models of LMX effects. The addition of 2 more papers created much deeper insights into the effects of LMX and how its effects may be influenced by the type of leader. First, we found further support for lowering our concern about the direct effect of LMX on performance and OCB, again, at least for organizations in Western cultures. Second, we found corroborating evidence for the importance of OCB as a key driver of performance in organizations. In fact, under certain conditions, OCB may have a large effect on performance. This suggests that further analysis of how to influence OCB beyond practicing LMX techniques would be warranted. Finally, the additional studies predict that being a transformational leader has a large impact on whether LMX behaviors will occur. Therefore, training in transformational leadership may be a worthwhile investment. Now it's your turn. You should practice applying the warrant model analysis process that we have reviewed in this tutorial. First, identify one or more causal or outcome factors that you find personally interesting or which you believe will be important to your future career development. Ask an answerable question that involves the factors you want to study. Determine if a designative claim has been proposed regarding the factors. If so, you can then locate a model that explains and predicts how the causal factors should impact the desired outcome, as we did in our example. If a designative claim does not exist, you may begin by simply searching for warrant models and devise one yourself. Then meet with a group of colleagues who share your interests. Develop a collaboration plan where you delegate responsibility for analyzing models that can contribute to the group EBA model. Share the results of your searches. Post a discussion forum the PICOs that you produce to summarize a paper. Prepare an EBA model that restructures the model shown in the paper you analyzed by only including substantive effects and applying rights path tracing rules when needed. Finally, use your EBA model to enhance the current group model to offer deeper insights about the causal effects. You may want to watch a tutorial on Lucidchart to learn how easy it is to draw these very insightful models in just a few minutes. A link to an excellent tutorial on Lucidchart is available in the Google+ evidence-based management community, or you can find them on YouTube. Most important, start your first EBA presentation project now. Create a draft, even if it's very rough. Share your drafts early and often with others so you can receive feedback. Revise your presentation based on this feedback. Your goal should be to make your model convincing and insightful, to showcase the distinctive expertise and critical analysis skills that you're developing in the process. In an upcoming tutorial, we'll be reviewing the types of evidence that can be used to test the validity of your warrant model. Each type of evidence can be determined by scanning a scholarly paper for specific phrases, tables, or diagrams. Once you have understood the rules for assessing evidence quality, you will be ready to begin practicing rating evidence quality on your own. Assessing the quality of evidence is the first and most important evidence-based analysis skill. Future tutorials and exercises will provide much opportunity for you to practice these techniques. Every distinctive skill, like that of a professional athlete, requires many hours of practice to master. Assessments will be available to help you determine your progress on your way to become a master in evidence-based analysis.